You think you know the most famous car in the world. You don't. The Aston Martin DB5, the car James Bond drove in Goldfinger, ejector seat, machine guns, revolving number plates and all, isn't sitting in a museum. It is not in some collector's garage you could go and visit. On the 18th of June, 1997, thieves broke into a private aircraft hangar in Boca Raton, Florida. They tore the security gate off its hinges, cut the alarm, chained the most recognizable car ever made to a vehicle, and dragged it out into the night, leaving tire marks across the hangar floor. Then it was gone. For 25 years, nothing. And when it finally resurfaced in 2022, it turned up in a locked room on the far side of the world, where it still sits tonight, and where the man who owned it cannot get it back. Nobody was ever arrested. This is the story of the real James Bond car and how somebody stole it and got away with it. Here's the first thing most people get wrong. James Bond was never supposed to drive a DB5 at all. In Ian Fleming's novels, Bond's car was a Bentley. And in the 1959 novel Goldfinger, when Fleming did put Bond in an Aston Martin, it wasn't the DB5. It was the older DB Mark III. The DB5 didn't exist yet. So when the filmmakers came to shoot Goldfinger in 1963 and decided Bond needed something newer, faster, more glamorous, they went straight to Aston Martin and asked for the latest thing on the books. What Aston handed over was their pre-production prototype. Chassis number DP2161, and here is a detail almost no one mentions. It was not even a finished DB5. It was a reworked Series 5 DB4, the development car, the very first of the line. That prototype, wearing the registration BMT216A, is the car that would become the most famous Aston Martin in history. And it deserved the part, even before a single gadget was bolted on. The DB5 ran a 4.0-litre straight-six designed by the Polish engineer Tadek Marek. It developed 282 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in 8.1 seconds, and a top speed comfortably over 140 miles an hour. In 1964, that was genuinely rapid. Autocar tested one and put it like this: more and more cars today can reach the magical ton, but those that can do it with the ease and rapidity of the Aston can be counted on the fingers of one hand. It cost £4,175 when new, about the price of a decent house. Only 1,021 DB5s were ever built. So it was beautiful, it was fast, it was rare, and it was expensive. What it was not, yet, was famous. That took a film, and a man with a workshop full of guns. The prototype arrived at Pinewood Studios in January 1964. The production designer Ken Adam drew up the gadgets, and the job of actually building them, making them work, fell to a special effects man named John Steers. In about 6 weeks, Steers and his team turned a Grand Tourer into a weapon. Twin Browning machine guns hidden behind the front side lights, revolving number plates, retractable tire slashers in the wheel hubs, a bulletproof screen that rose from the boot, an oil slick sprayer, a smoke screen, a tracking scope in the dashboard, and of course, the passenger ejector seat, the gag that made cinema audiences gasp out loud in 1964. There were so many gadgets that several were fitted to the car and never even used on screen. Steers was known on set as the real Q. He would go on to win 2 Academy Awards, one for the next Bond film, Thunderball, and one, years later, for a little picture called Star Wars. And the effect on Aston Martin was instant. Overnight, a small, perpetually struggling British car firm had the most desirable badge in all of motoring. Sean Connery, the DB5, and that silver paint became one image. The most famous car in the world was born. Now, this is where it gets forensic, and where the title matters, because there was never just one Bond DB5, there were four. The real one, the gadget car, the prototype, was DP2161, the car we've been talking about. A second car, chassis DB51486R, registered FMP7B, did the high-speed driving scenes with none of the gadgets fitted. Then, after the film, Aston built two more to tour the world promoting the next Bond picture, DB52008R and DB52017R. Those promotional cars are still around. One of them sold at auction in 2019 for $6.4 million. The other sits today in a motor museum in the Netherlands. Worth a fortune, both of them, and yet neither is the one that counts. The original, the gadget prototype that actually appeared in Goldfinger, is the car that was stolen. And that is the one nobody can find a price for, because you cannot buy it. In 1986, a Florida property developer named Anthony Pugliese bought the real car, DP2161, at a Sotheby's auction for around $250,000. A bargain even then. He kept it in a climate-controlled hangar at Boca Raton Airport. And on that night in June 1997, it was taken. The insurers eventually paid out. The police trail went cold within weeks. The most recognizable car on the planet, a car that, if you tried to drive it down any street in Britain, would stop traffic, had been stolen and simply swallowed up. No ransom, no sighting, no wreck in a quarry. The most famous car in the world had vanished into silence. Then, 25 years later, in 2022, a man called Christopher Maranello changed the story. Maranello runs a firm called Art Recovery International, and he is essentially a professional hunter of stolen treasures. He announced that he had found it. It was a verified match to chassis DP2161, sitting in a private collection somewhere in the Middle East. Dubai, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia were all named as areas of interest. But here is the cruel part. Knowing where a car is and getting it back are two completely different things. Marinello believes whoever holds it now may not even know it is stolen, that they may have bought it in good faith for a great deal of money. There is a title dispute, and so, as of today, nearly 30 years after that hangar was broken into, the car has never been physically recovered, never returned to the owner. Located at last, but never brought home. And there is a final irony in all of this, one that sits right at the heart of the channel. The company that the DB5 made immortal has spent its entire existence at the edge of the grave. Aston Martin has gone bankrupt around 7 times. It collapsed into receivership in 1974. Ford bought it and then sold it off in 2007 for £475 million. In 2020, it had to be rescued all over again by a consortium led by the billionaire Lawrence Stroll. The marque that built the most famous car in the world has never once been able to hold on to its own fortune, and it cannot get its own crown jewel back either. They will, however, sell you a brand new one. In 2020, Aston Martin built 25 Goldfinger continuation DB5s, £2.75 million each, complete with working machine guns and a real smokescreen. There is just one catch. They are not road legal. So you can own a perfect copy for the price of a country estate, and you are not allowed to drive it anywhere. The real one, worth an estimated £18 million, sits in a locked room on the far side of the world. So that's the story of the real James Bond car. The most famous machine in cinema history, dragged out of a hangar in the dead of night, gone for a quarter of a century, found at last and still never brought home. The thieves were never caught. The owner never got it back. And somewhere in a private collection, the genuine Goldfinger DB5 sits in silence. The one car that even 007 could not recover. Do you think it will ever come home? And where do you reckon it is hiding? Let me know in the comments.